Today we're going to go through the entire application process from start to finish for an actual use Section 1A application. And we're going to do it using the TS standard application. So again, it's going to be $275 per class. So a little more expensive, $50 more. However, you have full latitude to describe exactly how you want to describe your face masks or whatever other good or service that you're providing under your mark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start today from Google, and I'm going to just show you guys how you can find the filing page. So if you just search for USPTO and then trademark and file, you're going to get the first link is apply online. This is the link that I've been showing in past episodes. Let's see, I can throw it up here for you guys, but it's right here. Anyways, what we do is you click on the initial application filing forms, and then you're going to click start your application in TS. Now, one thing I want to point out, I've already logged into USPTO.gov. If you get to this page and you click start your application in TS, it's going to prompt you to log in. Now, creating a USPTO.gov account is really simple. So I'm going to click on start your application in TS. Now, I want to point out again, I'm already logged in, so it takes me straight to this page. So once we're here, all you have to do is click the TS standard button right here. So again, $275 per class. It's $50 more expensive than the $225 application, the TS Plus application, but we're going to have full latitude to describe our goods any way that we want. Okay. Now, for the purposes of this application, we are going to be submitting a mark to protect. I will show you in a second. adibiip group face mask right here. So this is just for the purposes of this tutorial. We are going to be protecting this particular face mask that we're selling here, $5. So let's go back to the application now that we know what we're doing. So we're going to click the TS standard, and we're going to do it as if I were filing on behalf of my company. So we hit continue here. The very first step is that you have to input the owner of the mark. So in this case, it's going to be our professional corporation, C corporation, and it's a corporation. And when we select corp, it's going to ask us to enter the state that this company was organized in. In this case, this company was organized in California. So we're going to select California, and then you have to input the address. So we're at 5 3rd Street, Suite 622, San Francisco, California. And then we have to input the postal code and our email address. Now, email addresses are required. You don't technically have to input the phone number or the fax number. That's optional. And sometimes I like to put our email address as well. That's also technically optional. Now, one thing I will tell you, when you hit next, if you don't put in a phone number, you're going to get a warning from the TS system. But don't worry. It's basically just saying, hey, if the examiner needs to contact you, it's nice if you could provide them your phone number. The truth of the matter is they generally rely on email to contact you. So it's not that big of an issue. So I usually just disregard this. And again, one of the reasons why I like to not input the phone number is because this application is actually going to be public record. So it's actually better, it's better just to keep your phone number off if you can. So we're going to hit continue. Now when we get to this screen, this is the part where we can input our mark. So in this case, let's put in the name that as it appears on the goods. So here in this case, if you take a look at the goods, it just has our name, adibiip group. If you want, you could actually put the entire Protecting Innovators. That would be acceptable. Let's just do it today for purposes of our tutorial. Protecting Innovators. And if you click preview, it's going to pop up another dialog, and that dialog is actually going to have an image version of the text that I just input into this text box here. Now, once we hit continue, we're going to get to the part where we actually get to input freeform text. Now remember, this is the TS standard application, so we have the option here to enter freeform text. You're going to want to take advantage of it. If you're in fact doing the standard application, why limit yourself? allow yourself the opportunity to take advantage of it and enter free-form text. So now when we click Add Goods and Services, we're going to get to the section where we actually get to input the text itself. So I like to just put clothing and apparel, and then namely face masks. Okay, so I think that's 2 words actually. Now, one thing I want to point out to everybody is if you're not careful with the way face masks are described, you might actually end up having to be in class 9 or class 10. Now, this isn't fatal. You'll have the opportunity to correct it later, but just keep that in mind. Clothing that is used for protective gear is more likely going to be in class 9, and if it's in the medical context, then it's going to be in class 10. So I just want you guys to know that depending on the examiner you get and the way you describe it, like if we wrote here protective face masks, to me that would indicate that it actually doesn't actually belong in class 25. But really, this is really about a form of headgear that's worn to satisfy local and municipal ordinances, and statewide ordinances. So we're going to just say face mask, and we're going to put it under class 25, which covers clothing and apparel. Now, this is the part where we have to be sure that we're actually selecting the right box here. So if you just did section 1B, that would be an intent to use. And as the application describes, no use of the mark yet, but we're actually using the mark in commerce in this hypothetical. So we're going to select section 1A because we actually have a storefront. This allows someone to actually log in and actually make a purchase of a mask. So we're going to select the section 1A application. Now, once we do that, we're going to have to enter in 2 dates, okay? Now, the first thing, though, that you have to do is you actually have to attach a specimen. Again, this can be a JPEG or a PDF. I generally like to submit PDFs of specimens. So I've already prepared the specimen for us. So let me just upload it here, and here's the specimen. Then you have to click Attach. Now, one thing I want to point out, what I usually do for these specimens is I usually attach a PDF of a screenshot of the web page. Now, one thing that you have to note is that when you do that, you have to include both the URL and the date that it was downloaded. So just keep that in mind. So when I click Return to Form, that's one of the first things that I'm going to do in this description of the box section. So I'm going to say a screenshot of a web page, and so you have to include the URL. So I'll include the URL here. I'll just copy and paste that URL. Screenshot of a web page taken on, and then today's date, because I did it today, August 24, 2020, showing use of the mark in commerce. Now, you also have to include the date that you first used the mark anywhere. So in this case, I'm going to go with the day that we actually formed the business. Even though that's not the silly date that we started selling the mask, I'm just going to include the date that we started. And then I believe I'll just make up this, I made up this date. So once we do that, all we need to do then is click Assign Filing Basis. And once we click Assign Filing Basis, we're basically half of the way there. You hit Continue at this point, and you're taken to this site. Now, this is the site where you get to actually input the docket number. So this is the identification that you use to reference and keep track of your application. This is less of a big deal if you have a lot of trademarks. Sorry, if you only have 1 or 2 trademarks. But if you have a lot of trademarks like us, the docket code is actually really important because it allows us to keep track of all these applications that we're filing. So we're going to input our docket number. We're going to add our email address. Now, one thing I recommend doing at this point is to actually include your assistant or co-worker or colleague. If you have other employees, anyone that's going to be involved in the management and tracking this application, I highly encourage you to input their email address here. Basically, when you get an office action from the trademark office, you have 6 months to respond. So it's really, really important that you're aware of it and that you act within those 6 months. So I highly recommend including other people's addresses on your team in this section. Now, if you have multiple people, you can enter up to 4. Just add them, separating them by commas or semicolons. Now, when you hit Continue, we're taken to the very last page where we actually sign it. So this is the validation page. Now, you can sign this form directly. Basically, what this is saying is that you understand this is a Section 1A application. So you're the owner of the mark, and you're actually using the mark in commerce to sell the goods that you identified. So in this case, we're using the mark adibiip group to sell face masks. This checkbox here, the second one, is just saying that we have a belief that we have a right to use the marks. Basically, there aren't others that are actually using the mark that have a right to use it that predate our right. This third checkbox is just saying that there's factual support for the statements that we make in this application. And the last checkbox is saying that we're signing on a penalty of perjury. So we understand that if we make false statements or lie in the application, we could be subject to fine or imprisonment. Signing is very simple with trademark applications. All you have to do is enter your name within slashes. They make it really simple. Now, if for some reason you didn't enter slashes in this box here, you would get an error. So just keep that in mind. And then when you click the date sign box, it auto-populates the date for you. And so we're going to add our name. And now one thing I want to note, with the name, we've been doing last name, comma, first name, and then in first initial. And then for the signatory's position, this is, in this case, I'm the president, so I'll enter president here. And then you do have to enter in a phone number. This is the one place where a phone number is required, so you get an error if you were to try to validate the application without uploading your phone number. Now, once we hit submit, we're basically there. It takes us to the very last page. This gives us a final opportunity to review the application before we submit, okay? So I'm gonna click the input button, and I'm actually gonna go through the application once, just making sure that it in fact is correct. One thing I wanna point out, it's very, very important that you get the mark correct because you cannot make changes to the actual mark after you file. That's really important. So I can't later go back and say, oh, you know what, it's actually innovator, not innovators. Not allowed. You're gonna have to prepare a whole new application and submit a whole new filing fee. So keep that in mind. It's really important that you get the mark itself correct. And just note that if for some reason, in this case, we had also done protective masks or masks used in medical settings, that probably would have involved class 9 and class 10 in addition to class 25. Now look at what I just did. I just named 3 classes. That's right. You have to pay 3 times 275. So just keep that in mind. Each class is an additional 275. Once I hit back, I can check out the mark. Again, this is the mark we're applying for, adibiip group protecting innovators. When we hit back, it takes us back to this page, and we click specimen. If I were to click this, it would link me to the PDF that I created. And the very last thing that I will say before I submit is if there was any mistake or any error in the application, you can fix it by just clicking go back. You can click go back to modify. TIAS will actually save your session for your entire application. So you can go backwards and forwards through the application without having to worry about losing information. So they make it really, really easy if you need to go back to modify anything. So in this case, I didn't see any issues, so I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna submit. Now, the one last thing that I will say is that they do make you check this box, and this checkbox basically just communicates what I explained before, which is that there are no refunds. Like, you have to get the mark correctly here. If you got that mark for some reason spelled incorrectly, unfortunately, there's nothing that you can do. You will not get a refund. You're gonna have to resubmit the entire application and repay the filing fee. So I'm okay with it. I'm gonna go ahead and click submit, and it's gonna take me to a payment page. Now, in this payment page, it's gonna give me the opportunity to input my credit card information, Visa, however you wanna pay. But after I submit my payment information, I'm going to be prompted with a button that will allow me to actually download a PDF of the application, also known as it's also actually includes what's called a filing receipt. And it's also gonna send me a separate email with the filing receipt. Now, why do I mention this? Well, the reason why I mention this is because that filing receipt is gonna have a serial number. And that serial number is gonna be tied to my application throughout the entire filing process. So at any time, I'll be able to track it. So I'll be able to go to tsdr.uspto.gov, which I have down here, and actually see the status of my application. And that serial number is gonna be tied to my application throughout the entire process. And also even after it's registered in the principal register, I will be able to access the application using the serial number if I want, or the registration number. But basically, the serial number is the best way to always keep track of your application.